I go, everywhere I travel, I see people. The whole planet is full of them. Some walk alone, some with a companion, and others go about in groups. Human beings is the name they go by, and they sure love to live huddled together in big, sprawling cities. They all seem very busy doing this and that, and getting on with their lives. Yep, people of the world tend to look very productive and in charge. If I went and talked to any of them, if I went and interviewed people and asked each of them whether they think they're in charge of their own destinies, I wonder what kind of answers I'd get. Most of them would confidently say, sure, I'm in charge of my own life path. And what about me? Am I really in charge of my own destiny? Do I know where I've come from, why I'm here, and where I'm going? After all, some people would say that just by using this credit card, I'm a virtual serf to powerful men who profit from my existence. Some have said we're all veritable slaves in an invisible penitentiary. If that's the case, then none of us are in charge of our lives. We only think we are, and that's kind of frightening. Maybe that invisible prison does exist. Maybe I can't see it because I've been trained not to be able to see it. Can that situation never change? After all, I sure don't like to think of myself as being on someone else's chain. I think it's time to investigate these matters. When in doubt, find out. That's the key. There are those who've looked into these matters long before my time. What did they have to say? That's what I'd like to know.
So it says here, there's an interesting caption that says, "Here stands the new man. His conception of reality is a dance of electronic images fired into his forebrain, a gossamer construction of his masters designed so that he will not under any circumstances perceive the actual or the real. His happiness is delivered to him through a tube or an electronic connection. His God lurks behind an electronic curtain. And when the curtain is pulled away, we find the CIA sorcerer and the media manipulator." Jim Keith, Mind Control, Mass Control, just one of the fine books on, the manipulation of consciousness that he did before he sadly basically was killed. He was one of the people, I think, one of few who understood that the real war is a war on consciousness. It's very important to always remember that it may have so many other permutations. Now we're seeing it's, mass killings in America or what have you. But, and then all heads turn, as soon as that comes on the little media framed image, then people are shocked, and they turn to that as if it's some sort of freak phenomena or something like that. It's actually, the sad case is it's not freak. And anyone who's really studied mind control understands that mind control is ubiquitous. It's almost the question of who is not mind controlled, as opposed to, who is mind controlled. It's just a difference in degree. The whole question of what is consciousness and how it can be manipulated is one of the most crucial questions of our time. In my work, it really goes along with the whole question of the origins of evil. I mean, it's origins of evil / war on consciousness, and the whole manipulation of man's thinking, his behavior, his biology. And this question has distinguished some of the greatest scholars in the world, people like Wilhelm Reich. But in a more modern context, even people like Alex Constantine, Jim Keith, Jim Marrs to a certain extent has gone into this.
Well, in ancient times, they used the sword and they used the gun and they used other methods like religion for pushing the populace around and getting people to do what was wanted. But in recent times, in the 20th century, there are new technologies that provide the expertise to control people totally without their knowledge. Means of electronic entrainment, brain control implants, methods of advertising that manipulate us against our will. And this isn't science fiction. This is something that's very documented. The Manchurian Candidate, of course, was about the creation of a mind-controlled assassin who, as I recollect, it's been years since I've seen the film, was going to be activated to kill the president. Now, this is wild science fiction, crazy impossibility, it just complete nuttiness. But then one takes into consideration the realization that Sirhan, for instance, after he killed Robert F. Kennedy, was examined by several experts, several hypnotherapists, and they came to the conclusion that Sirhan was under hypnotic control when he killed Kennedy. They don't make a big deal out of that on 60 Minutes, but that just happens to be the fact.
There's been others who've theorized, Fritz Springmeier has done some fantastic work on the manipulation of the human brain through technotronic means. What am I saying? It's weaponry, psychic weaponry, radiotronic weaponry that's being used, ELF waves, all sorts of different technologies that are patented. People can go and find out about it, research it, discover it. If you're coming from the world of Ted Gunderson and John DeCamp, we even find out that families who are connected to secret agencies, or maybe have been communist spies, or who've been part of the Nazi network, who have found homes in America, people who are connected to Operation Paperclip and to the NSA, there's histories of them selling their own children into, mind control experiments. Amazingly, people in the military. This is a documented, known fact. It's unbelievable to think of it, But the most important thing is always to remember that there is this kind of war going on, even though, you may not realize it. And also to realize that there's also the cover-up campaign against mind control. The people who are perpetrating this, who are putting these sleepers out there, who are planning assassinations, who are behind, Sirhan, all the way up through Son of Sam and Mark Hinckley, David Chapman. The list is endless, when you start thinking about it. Jim Jones, this has all been exposed as sort of mind control based cults. But the fact is they don't want the average person realizing this. They don't want, so there's the mind control concept or experimentation, and then there's the smoke screen as well. So you're dealing with two different things here. You're dealing with the fact itself, which is a very interesting study, but then you have all the rebuttal and the general ubiquitous consensus that, oh, no, there's no such thing at all. It's the lone gunman. It's the lone nut, or disgruntled teens, when it comes to Columbine and some of these others, just teens gone out of control. Okay, teens going out of control is one thing. Teens with automatic weapons that you can only find from, government agencies and military camps is another. And you track back and you find out the history of these people being connected to some of these orgs and institutions and military establishments. David Berkowitz has revealed a great deal from prison about that, and the elaborate Luciferian satanic networks that work with mind control on all its levels, and tying into the military establishment. This has been thoroughly documented.
In 1993, announced that the entire spree was engineered by a satanic cult, and others had participated in the plot.
Of course, everyone had played a role as far as the chanting and the praying. Everyone had a role in that, and understanding that, this was going to be another sacrifice to our gods. Bunch of scumbags that they were. Our gods, Lucifer and his crew, and we said, yeah, this is going to be another one for you, and that's
I certainly recommend Maury Terry's Ultimate Evil, in which Berkowitz reveals the whole level of operations, government black ops, and mind control behind the Son of Sam, behind the Son of Sam killings. That ties into people also blowing the whistle, like Stanley Kubrick. making movies, trying to reveal some of this stuff, and then he suddenly mysteriously dies. So there's a lot of. But anyone who's really studied this subject for a long time knows that it's not modern. It doesn't just date from the period of the discovery of America or whatever. You can take it back to England. Very strange happenings with serial killers there, like the one that jumps to mind, of course, is Peter Sutcliffe. Some of the revelations he made in court. He was known as the Yorkshire Ripper. I've made a detailed study of so many of these kinds of personalities, both in America and in England, and the same refrain. It's almost unbelievable how common the refrain is. Not just about their own psychological upbringing with their parents and so on, but during their spree of crimes. They made me do it. Voices made me do it. Hey doc, I'm possessed. They've had this whole run-in with doctors. The Hungerford killing, for instance, the name of the perpetrator escapes me right now, but it's the famous Hungerford case, is blatant mind control. And the guy having serious problems, committing his crime maybe within half an hour of having a phone call from his specialist. A bizarre phone call was recorded in which the guy lifts the phone, it's perfectly normal, lifts the phone, puts it down, goes upstairs, gets on his hunting attire, his military fatigues, arms himself to the teeth with all of this, hunting attire, and then goes down, to Hungerford and basically slaughters a lot of people. And then, the normal ubiquitous, he kills himself out of remorse bit at the end. No, he killed himself at the end after the head detective arrives and through a loudspeaker or through some sort of a bullhorn coaxes him out. Johnny, come out, give yourself up, you're surrounded. And then you hear a shot. So how do we know that particular speech from that detective or that chief of police is not loaded with what they call trigger terms? We know what exists in backward masking. We know that codes have been used in the military. Well, language is a communication device. How do we not know that in that speech, coded, embedded within that particular speech, when they're saying, hey, Johnny, come out, give yourself up, you're surrounded, how do we not know that within that is not some trigger word, and then bang, pop, you hear, and then the media will never know. It's another mystery. Nobody will ever come to and then the media unleash their story for you. They have their little story and the weeping parents, and we had no idea that our son was such a lunatic. No, the whole world now knows that he's a mass murdering psychopath, but you didn't know. So we got whole questions there that need to be looked at and investigated. Who are the parents of these people? What is all this symbolism about? Are these just, disgruntled people? There's a lot of disgruntled people in the world. There's a lot of frustrated, jaded teens, but a lot of them don't, get into Trans Ams and drive them through, McDonald's windows. A lot of them don't go and buy automatic weapons and murder innocent people. So people need to wake up and realize this thing is so much deeper. And then the history of it. The history of it goes back through the Assassins, which was the Islamic, during the Crusades. The Crusaders, the Western Crusaders were absolutely stunned, you see, about how it could be that these Saracens and these Islamic warriors were so unbelievably ruthless and just so dedicated, almost had no fear of death. Of course, then they subsequently find out, after they've been in the Middle East a while, that this is a hashish-based cult. These guys are on the bong before they even get on their horses, and other drugs, other kinds of mind-altering drugs, disseminated to them by their occult leaders, people of Islamic versions of Freemasonry. And it's a very elaborate story. In fact, you can pick up this story in, I think it was the book Conspiranoia, but I'm sure that Jim Keith and others have covered this. It's a pretty elaborate story of exactly how the indoctrination process of the Islamic warriors in those days. Basically, it boils down to the fact that they condition you to believe you are an angel, you are serving Allah, and those guys are all the devils, you see, and you killing them is doing great work for Allah and the Prophet. Well, if you're mind controlled into that, you're going to be raging into war and killing and having no problem being very brave and all of that, because you're conditioned to believe that there's no such thing as death, and even after you die, you're going to be surrounded by wonderful, damsels and angelic forms and all of this. So the Templars, later especially the Crusaders, after they had married in with some of these Oriental families and had got picked up a lot of this occult knowledge, started to work it out that, wait a minute, if we could have an army, if we could have agents, if we could have captains and people in our military establishment that had this kind of dedication, we could conquer the world. You see, because remember, England, Britain, you know, is a very small place. Holland, some of the old centers of government are not particularly big. They don't have large populations. They don't have large armies. They can't compete against the great continents of the world. You know, Alexander the Great found that out. So, but wait a minute, if you have one man who's got the power of 10 men because he's been indoctrinated, not only is this chump going to do what you tell him to do, he's also going to be a perfect fighting machine. But it means the removal, does it not, of his normal circuitry of morality. Well, nothing could be easier. Morality, as the philosophers and psychologists have told you, about paper thin anyway. You only have to say a few choice words to somebody and they've lost their head. So nothing could be simpler. And as these chaps found out, these experimenters, that now we understand is the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Now we understand is the, you know, these Frankfurt School and all of these people of the 20th century. But this thing goes way back through the assassins, through the whole drug cult, or the cult of Dionysus, where the mind-altering, you know, again, harkens back to something I've said repeatedly in my work, is that all those things, all those modalities, all those wonderful spiritual occult practices that have the ability to take your soul up, that have the ability to enlighten you, to inspire you, to sharpen your reason, your critical ability, all those things, every one of them has the equal power in the wrong hands to do the opposite, to take you down. It's a difference between sorcery and magic. Sorcery and magic. Never end talking about this. It's a very, very important concept. And all that you see out there in the world today, especially in the media, and most of even the tinkering around with occult subjects, is a form of sorcery. And I'm not the first to have said that. And that's why there's so much insanity down the line, so much misinterpretation, because toxic individuals in control of, you know, occult information is wrong. It's going to go askew very easily, because we have a vast misunderstanding of what all this means. But without even getting into all of that, you know, the Bible, is the Bible sorcery or is the Bible magic? Is it a bit of both? You know, so it goes back through the assassins, it goes back through these, and not only them, there's been many cults in the Orient. The Thuggee is another one to be studying, where we get the word thug. Not only were these people funded and created by British money, by the East India Company, the Thuggees were never a problem before the British secret apparatus got there through the East India Company, and wanting to destroy and disempower the native Indians who resisted the infiltration of British elements, they formed a criminal organization, the Thuggee. They funded these, you know, bong-smoking Shiva worshippers or whatever they were, Kali worshippers, who were no threat to anyone. Nothing more than a simple faction, easily taken care of in the region. Suddenly have thousands and thousands of pounds. They're infiltrated by specialists from Britain, from the East India Company, to start plaguing the region, you see, and causing upheaval and disruption, by which the British government hid behind. The triads, you know, the Tong, I mean, the list is endless. So this understanding of allegiance and realizing what a fragile, pathetic creature human beings are anyway, so totally traumatized that it's very easy to just, you know, paint over or even completely erase the human sensibility, the human sensibilities of morality and so on. And it goes right back into the question of religion as well. Religion is very tied up into this, because you're not appealing to man's reason when you're dealing with mind control. That's the first thing. You're dealing to man's irrational self, which is why people like myself are so adamant about developing the reason and developing man's higher, you know, levels of consciousness, because then there's only chance of being immune to all of this. But that's not the agenda of religion. That's not the agenda of the mind controllers. They want to drag you down into an irrational, limbic, mammalian, reptilian, you know, level of consciousness, what the Indian Vedas would call the lower chakra drives, and keep you there permanently, so that you're confused and terribly weak, terribly psychologically disempowered. And so therefore you're going to seek stability, you're going to seek security through whatever kinds of handrails that are then provided for you by the system. You know. Again, the other side of this is that you have the problem, and you have the historical issue, historical problem, but you also have a new age now in which we have the internet, we have these writers, authors, so we're catching up on the game. We have even movies on the subject, incredibly detailed movies, in fact, that, you know, look into the whole of this.
They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of snakes is under their lips. Their mouths are full of bitterness and curses, and in their paths, nothing but ruin and misery, and the fear of God is not before their eyes. They have taken the hearts and minds of our leaders. They have recruited the rich and the powerful, and they have blinded us to the truth. Our human spirit is corrupted. Why do we worship greed? Because outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners. Our owners. They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around you.
Easy to apply nails. Pre-colored in 7 luscious hues. Just...
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep.
Oh, goddamn hacker, that second damn night that asshole's cut in.
The movement was begun 8 months ago by a small group of scientists who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent through...
Things giving me a headache here. Tell me about it. Must took the hackers months to figure out how to do this.
The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.